folks. Once again, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and start the recording on our webinar. Ooh. All right, folks, thank you so much. We've officially started the recording. Wanted to thank you for joining us today for our webinar on web-based paperless HR with Sage HRMS. We are going to be going through a few quick housekeeping items here. The first of which is today we're going to be having right around a 45-minute presentation. We usually try to keep it to under an hour. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end. And if you do have any questions that come up during the webinar, please feel free to put them into the question box throughout the presentation. You don't need to wait until the end, and we'll address them once we get to the Q&A part of our webinar today. And just so you know, we'll also be sending everybody a copy of the slide deck you're about to see, as well as the recording of the webinar today in a follow-up email that you'll all get after the event. A little bit about Braincell. We've been around for about 25 years. We pride ourselves in being unbiased business consultants, and we cover a wide range of business technologies from ERP to CRM, marketing automation, and business intelligence. We are a Sage Platinum partner, and we've been partnered with them for a little over a decade now. Moving on to your presenter today, some of you have already started speaking with him. We're joined by Joe Rotella, who is our HRMS expert, and he is going to be taking us through the hows and whys and what's related to Sage HRMS. So without further ado, Joe, I will turn things over to you to get started on our webinar.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly.
Sure.
So I had a chance to talk with some folks while we were kind of in the waiting room there, and I think this lines up pretty good with what some of you had said. When we look at traditional HR, it can be very paper intensive, and there's a lot of manual data entry. And of course, anytime we have manual data entry, we're subject to a slower process, as well as we introduce the possibility of errors. It also can be very difficult to keep systems in sync. And what I mean by that is you've got data in silos or in different islands throughout the organization. So you add a new employee, and then somebody else may have to add that to a spreadsheet if you don't even have an HRMS. Then you may have to add them to Active Directory if you're using that as your LDAP server to control logins into systems or your email. You may have to go then add them to a payroll system. So things kind of can get a little tricky there. It also can be just a plain old bad experience for everyone. I like to think of, myself, even though I just turned 55, in some ways I think, oh my God, I'm like a millennial. I love to go shopping online. I order a package, I track it, I send an e-card, and I never have to talk to a person. And I can do it 24/7, even when I'm on the road. And yet we still have organizations where if somebody wants to change an address, update an emergency contact, change withholdings, they're having to go get a piece of paper, print it out, fill it in, and then go carry it to someone. And if there's an approval process, then they have to go walk it around to different people to get all the different signatures to have that approved. Well, I think we can change all that with Sage HRMS. We can be completely paperless, all the way from a job rec through onboarding someone to day-to-day transactions, be it employee-based transactions like updating an address, changing emergency contacts, to manager-based transactions, maybe giving someone a raise, giving someone a bonus, adding a note to their employee file. We can leverage reports and alerts to help manage the process. And I think overall, we provide an experience then that really matches users' expectations. And, I said, oh, I was 55 and I think I'm an exception. I'm not sure that's really true. I think it's across all ages now that people expect to be able to do things online, efficiently without a ton of human interaction for basic transactional things. The nice part about that is it then frees up staff that may be handling those transactions now so that they can play a more strategic role in the organization and provide better customer service. I'd rather have my HR folks spend one-on-one time with employees, making sure we're the employer of choice, than I would having them typing in data, into a system based on paper forms. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a story today. Now, behind the scenes, there's lots of modules that make this work. The core, of course, is Sage HRMS. And HRMS is actually broken up into HR and then lots of other supporting modules. And that's the nice part about HRMS. It's called a best of breed solution, meaning that you can start with just core HR and then add on different modules. Some of them are modules produced by Sage. Some of them are modules that are written by Sage endorsed development partners. Other times it's a module that's totally outside of the Sage ecosphere, but will connect to Sage just fine. And it's one of the things they take pride on in this architecture. So I know somebody on the phone said, oh, we use an applicant tracking system, an ATS. Well, that's cool because the odds are we can connect it to Sage HRMS and have those candidates flow right into the HR application. We're going to look at HRMS HR Actions. That gives you all your paperless forms, including your onboarding forms. We'll talk a little bit about alerts and workflow, Active Directory conduit. We'll kind of wander maybe as questions come in. So with that, I'm going to get out of the slides because I think it's much more interesting to see the real stuff. And I've brought up Sage HRMS. So this is the core HR product. And I'm actually not going to spend a lot of time in this because I like transactions to flow in and out of the system on its own. But you can see here that we've got a basic database where we can track employee information. So if I go look up one of our employees, say Dan Rutherford, the general model here is this tab-based interface. There's a set of tabs across the top: personal, job and pay, benefits, and so on. And sometimes there's another row or two underneath that. So if we look under personal, I can look up someone's demographics and get their address and phone, their marital status, birth date, gender. Do we have to report them for EEO purposes? If they have a photo on file, we can put that in there because we have an org chart capability, and the org chart will actually put people's pictures right on the org chart. I keep track of all their HR status. So that's going to be their hire date, a seniority date. If they have maybe left the organization and come back, we'll have the original date and then we'll have the rehire date. All of your visa and I-9 information, what documents you've seen, if they've been authorized, of course, military information. And you'll see a tab here, user defined. Well, this is an extensible system, very flexible. So if you said, oh, hey, in our organization, we really need to track blank. We give each employee one of these, or we track this for each employee. Well, you can build out panels and fields to do that. So in this case, in a user-defined area, I'm tracking what team they're in or what locker they've been assigned or whether or not they're getting a bonus at a certain percentage. I can track termination information, leave of absence information, events. This could be any kind of events that you want to describe, employee notes, even attachments if you want to put documentation is here as well. And we go right across the top, the same thing with job and pay, and see somebody's job and their pay rate. All of this will flow right into your payroll system. So it'll keep the payroll and HR in sync, no worries. When you need to do something, you can go over here and add a new employee, and it basically is going to walk you through a little wizard. Or terminate an employee, or mark that they're going on a leave of absence, or they're coming back from a leave of absence. So this might be how most HR folks are used to doing their job, their role, is they're going into an HRS and basically adding information. Typically that's driven from paper forms. The flip side is getting information out, and here we have a basic reports structure. So I can go in here and look at reports, and for example, there's all my EEO reports, be it the EEO 1, the 4, the VETS 4212, and so on. If I've got to do OSHA reports, same deal. I've got my 101, 200, 300, 300A, and so on. Benefit reports, maybe you're trying to write a benefit letter to everyone, or you've got to do COBRA information because somebody left. All that can be generated right out of HRMS. I'm going to just leave this sitting though and kind of ignore it because I like doing everything paperless without HR typing into that system. So I'm going to bring up a browser and go to Sage ESS, Employee Self-Service. So this will work on any browser. There's nothing to install. People, as long as they can get to the internet, be it at home, the library, a kiosk at your location, a tablet in a construction trailer, no worries. And I'm going to log in as a manager. Let's say Clint Eastwood. And so here you see the basic layout for ESS. Down the left-hand side, we have a navigation. And in this case, I can see, for example, my personal information. What does HR have on file for my marital status and my birth date and things like that? How about for my address or my phone number, home, business, cell, and so on? My past education, so you get the idea. I can look at my compensation, and it'll bring in my current compensation and then show me my compensation history. I can do my pay history and even bring up pay stubs online. And of course, I'm going to zoom in, so you're going to see a lot of scrolling because it's huge on my screen now. But here's a typical pay stub, and this is powered by Sage Payroll, but we can connect to other payroll systems as well. So again, that's the advantage there of that best of breed solution. This is sort of the standard layout for a pay stub, but we can customize the layout as well. So let's get out of there. Let's see, what else have we got in here? Information about my job. So I've got my current job, how long I've been in that position, the division, the department, the location, and I can have my job history as well. And then I have tabs across the top. This is my employee view, but remember I'm logged in as Clint Eastwood, a manager. So I'm going to have a manager view into all of this as well. Maybe you enable time off requests. So we can set the system up so people can go in, request time off through self-service, and then a manager has to approve it. And then we can see a calendar of where everybody's time off is. I don't have it enabled here because I'm using a different time and attendance module. I can also, if you want to turn it on, see my employees, my direct reports, even my skip levels, and what their compensation is. And if I go look up one of them, I would get their whole history, if they had multiple pay raises while they were working for me. Same thing, I can bring up somebody's emergency contacts. Anything I can do for myself almost, but I can do for my direct reports. I have a set of reports as well. This main area you see, this dashboard, these gray boxes are called gadgets. And so you can configure exactly what role gets what gadgets. So again, this is just a sample environment, and I play in this environment. I turn things on and off and try different things. So sometimes it gets a little squirrely, but it's a good way for me to learn and experiment. In this case, I have it set up that the manager can see their own time off, what they've taken, how much they have requested but haven't taken yet, what's left. And then of course they can see their whole time off history. They really haven't taken any yet, so I don't have any history that I can go see on this guy. In my own employees' compensation, their length of service, messages from HR, my own pay history, my own benefits. So here we're really trying to answer the most common questions that HR gets. When people call or stop in to say, how much vacation time do I have left? And then you give them, 30 hours. They're like, I think I should have 40. Well, let's go look at everything you've taken, and they can do all that themselves. What are my benefits? What did I currently select? And how much do you contribute? How much do I contribute? Things like that. The other nice thing about ESS is it's also a framework into which we can plug other applications. So here I've plugged in the benefits module. And so people can go in if they have a new life event, a change in marital status, a change of dependent, or they can do open enrollment. And so if they go to open enrollment, it's going to walk them through and say, okay, for medical, you're not enrolled. What are your options? And somebody can look and say, well, I'd like the high deductible plan. And if they hit update costs, it's going to tell them exactly what that's going to cost them. So they can go through this little wizard step by step and choose their benefits. That's one way to do benefits. Where that's going, by the way, that data is going right here into the employee record and underneath benefits. So for each person, it's going to list what are all their benefits, the effective date, the expiration date, what coverage do they have, what their premium is, what the employer contributes, and so on. Insurance benefits, saving benefits, that would be like your 401k. If they have any dependents and beneficiaries, who are they, what benefits have they chosen for them, and then if they participate in any wellness programs that you want to track. So we could do it this way, we could do it through employee self-service right here. You might want to do it through paper. Maybe that's what you do today. So then you'd come in here and update this stuff in Sage HRMS. Maybe use a third-party benefits provider's website. So Medical Mutual is the one that I use. I can go to Medical Mutual and I can open enroll. I can go and change my dependents. Well, we have a gizmo that'll have that data flow right into Sage HRMS. And of course, from HRMS, it'll go ahead and update payroll. So again, there's lots of different ways to accomplish something. But we can plug in those kinds of things over here on the left-hand side, be it things like, open enrollment, or maybe a time and attendance module. So lots of ways to collect time. If you have a timekeeping system, maybe you have punch clocks, we can pull that data in. Maybe you want to have web-based time. That's what I've got here. Maybe you want to have a combination of the both. No worries. Biometric clocks, no worries. I'm going to go down here, though, to HR Actions. And HR Actions, this is, I would call it forms if I were in the real world. And you see lots of scrolling because I've zoomed in a bunch here. But HR Actions is really where you get all your forms for the entire employment lifecycle. Here, as a manager, I have a little status box. It lets me know if I have any forms waiting to review. So here, Brad Pitt, one of my employees, filled out the handbook acknowledgement form. And there's just one item here under routing, O1. O stands for operations. That means manager. So my first level manager. O2 is my manager's manager. O3 is my manager's manager's manager, and so on. So this just needs one signature. It's their manager. That's me. I can bring up the form. I can look at exactly what Clint filled out when he read the handbook. And I can say, finally, and hit approve. So that's done. I'm tracking whether or not somebody's acknowledged the handbook. In Sage HRMS, that date just automatically flowed right into Sage HRMS. Let's see what else I have over here on our dashboard. If anything is being routed for review, I can see that. So, for me, the old days, if I were a manager and I submitted some paperwork and it needed 3 or 4 signatures, if it didn't happen, I'd have to go and track down, okay, who's got it now? Did you sign it? Where is it? Is it stuck on your desk? I don't have to do that here. It'll tell me exactly where the form is. So here's the handbook acknowledgement. It's all signed off on. Once HR says, yep, I approve it, because I have it that HR has to hit approve, then it will disappear from here. Of course, there's a pretty robust search engine, so I could go search for any form that I've ever been involved with just to see what's going on. I have a file cabinet for personal forms, change my address, change my phone, request FEMLA. I have a file cabinet for manager-like forms, pay change, transfer, promotion. Because I'm a manager, I could be on a form as someone who has to approve something. Well, here I can assign a delegate. So if I know I'm going on vacation, maybe I want Sam Wilson is one of the managers here in the factory with me. So I'm going to go ahead and say Sam Wilson has my delegation while I'm on vacation from the 1st of September till, I don't know, the 13th of September. So now I have a delegate. During that period, anything that I have to approve, I'll get emails saying you have a form to approve, and so will Sam. This way I can check on Sam when I get back because I've got the same emails. But Sam then can do approvals on my behalf. Of course, HR can override delegates, assign new ones, all that stuff. And then I've got this online file cabinet. So I can go and look, here's any actions I've been involved in. We give you the most recent ones. Either that means it was for one of your employees, one of your direct reports. Even if they initiated it, I would see it. Or maybe I initiated it, Clint Eastwood. I did a pay change for Brad Pitt, right? Or maybe I was an approver somewhere along the way. So Shania Twain did her performance appraisal. HR approved it. Then Shania looked at it. Then I was her manager. I approved it. And then it went over to an administrator. And of course, I can search for just about anything. But this story I want to tell says, hey, it's time to hire somebody. Clint needs help. I'm a big fan of having a trail of approvals. I like everything to have somebody who's signed off on it. So in this case, Sam says, hey, I want to hire somebody. Let me go to the manager file cabinet, bring up a form. In this case, it's not for an existing employee. It's for something new. I'm going to fill out a request to hire form. Now, we ship with about 40 or so forms out of the box, but there's no limit to how many forms you have with Sage HRMS and HR Actions. You can build your own, you can edit the 40 and use them as a starting point, ignore them, start from scratch, Totally up to you. And by the way, when you build a form, you can use any field, any of all the fields that you saw when I was checking out Dan Rutherford before. Any field in any of these tabs, except for benefits, you can put on a form, including custom details, including all the payroll fields, like no worries. So I built a little request for hire form. It's one of the samples that we ship with. You may change it. You may say, we don't even want to have a form to hire somebody. Totally up to you. I've got an attachment here. You can have up to 5 attachments with any form. So maybe Clint wrote a Word doc, that says, hey, I want to go ahead and hire somebody and here's why, and I've got a justification for it. So he just finds the file that he wants, clicks it, and then goes ahead and here and hits attached. And this form now will travel, this documentation will travel with this form. So he leaves a comment, I really need help. If you've got multiple companies, no worries, you can pick which one. Is it a replacement hire? No. Do you have budget? Yes. When do you want them to start? Let's have them start, I don't know, the 20th when I get back from vacation. And I think they're gonna start at about 30K. And what type of employee? Is it regular, full-time, part-time, whatever? This is full-time. This is coming right out of HR, so there's no disconnect here. These fields are all driven right by Sage HRMS. And I'm going to hire them to be a machine operator in the engineering department division, over in the manufacturing department, and the location is going to be Daly City, California. Now you can see I've got a pretty big routing slip here. It goes to my manager, my manager's manager, then someone in HR. So when I hit initiate, it's going to send in an email to John Wayne saying you have something to approve. Nothing confidential in the email. It's just going to say you have a request to hire. It was submitted on this date. It's from Clint Eastwood and it's ID number 1091. John would then go ahead and get his email and he would say, oh, wow, I have something to approve. Let me go do that. There'll be a link in the email. John would click it. It would take him right where he needs to go, forcing him to log in if he wasn't logged in. I'm just doing it by hand. And sure enough, there's the request to hire, new employee submitted by Clint Eastwood. Here's my 4 signatures right across that routing. So Clint can look at it, or John can look at it. It's confusing when you change hats so many times. And I have it set up that approvers can change values on the form. Now you can do this on a per form basis, but some of you out there in your environment might have it set up that when someone approves a form, they could look at it and say, oh, I don't think so. Cross something out, write in something new and initial it. Well, that's exactly what this does here. So John Wayne could look at this and say, yeah, I see you want to start him at 30, but I would like to try to get him in here a little under budget. How about 29.5? Because that gives us room, maybe to give them a bonus or something after 6 months. So I'm going to say, yep, you need help. Start a little lower and then bump up in 6 months. I hit approve. It's going to send it to the next person on the routing slip. They're going to see the new value. They're going to see my comment. I can hit disapprove. It'll go back to Clint. Or anyone on the routing slip can push it backwards in the routing if they want to leave a comment and say, hey, what do you think of this? Could you change it? And then send it forward. So the same as you would do if you were walking around with a piece of paper, we do it electronically. So I'm going to hit approve and it's going to go to Grace. So little by little, we would walk that routing slip. I'm going to change hats now, though, log into a different website where we administer all this paperless process. And I'm going to log in as Veronica Bell, the head of HR. One of the nice things about this, right off the bat, Veronica has a dashboard and she can see every form that currently is routing for signatures. So this is kind of a first in some cases because a lot of times HR doesn't know what work is coming down the pipe till it hits their desk signed and approved. But in this case, I can see, well, there's a pay change coming in, another pay change, a bunch of pay changes. Someone's updated their education, somebody else did their performance review. Now, if I'm in payroll, you might give them a login to this and let them log in so they can say, whoa, we've got some pay changes coming down the pipe. We better see when they expect that to take effect. Is it before this next pay run or not? If it's before, I got to get them motivated. Or you could use alerts. Now, alerts is a database watchdog. Behind the scenes, it can stare at any number of databases. You just add databases by changing your licensing of the product. At a minimum, it sends email, but it can also even send text messages. It can even trigger software. It can send people reports automatically. So you could have an alert set up here that is triggered whenever there's a form that's going to change payroll and you're within so many days of payroll being processed. You could email the person or who's next on the routing slip or payroll or any combination of them to say, hey, the window to get this in before payroll is, 2 days. You better sign off and get it moving. In this case, I can look at this and say, oh, it's a new hire form. Let me go check it out. I'm going to audit it. Auditing is like reaching into that paper process, and you can change things on the form, but it doesn't impact the routing at all. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this and say, okay, yeah, this looks good. John signed off on it. Here's the audit trail. John Wayne lowered the starting amount. Everything looks good. I don't really need to change anything. But in our leadership meeting this morning, the CEO said, it's okay for Clint to hire someone, just make it happen. So I'm going to go ahead and I could cancel the form. I don't want to do that. I could go backwards in the routing. I could skip one at a time. I'd have to skip 4 people though, or I can just skip it all and said CEO said this is approved. So now we've got somebody ready to hire. Well, what happens next? So it could be that on your website, you post your jobs. That's cool. It could be that you're using an applicant tracking system. That's cool too. If you want, we have a little attachment here that lets you put jobs right on your website. So if you don't need a full applicant tracking system, and we have those too, but you want to just have a place for jobs on your website, maybe right now it just says email your resume to HR, and then that's a ton of work because HR has to type all that in. We can add this little gizmo to the bottom of your website where people can go and click find jobs, see the jobs, click on the job, get the description, and sure enough, there's the online form. So this is a simple replacement for a paper application. I do include the fields for EEO reporting, so we capture that right during the applicant process. You could decide you don't want this at all. You don't hire that many folks, you don't need anything. You could say we need an ATS. You could do this in the middle. Again, totally flexible. If I log in, and I log in as the head of HR, you can see how this works. There's a place that says job postings. And if I want to add a new job, I just go in here and say, this is the chief cook and bottle washer. They wash bottles. And which company is it for? What location is it for? What job code in the HR system? I don't have a bottle washer, so I'll make him a gardener. And I could even assign what managers can log in here and look at the posts. And then I can choose what application form I want to put on this job post. These are forms built, again, with HR Actions, and you can have different applications for different jobs. I have one that doesn't have driver's license info, but if you're hiring someone who's going to drive, you might want to capture that right on the application. So my bottle washer doesn't drive. I'll just pick, my normal application. And if I go ahead and hit insert, that's it. This job is live on the website. If I log off and I search for jobs, there's my chief cook and bottle washer, and I would have the app up there. I don't have a gardener position, so, failed. Let's go ahead and log in though and see who has applied for our jobs. I've got machine operators, 2 people have applied. Joe Rotella, he's ready to hire. We liked him. We've already interviewed him, he's good. And Steve Salmon. If I look at Steve, I can see exactly what he filled out in the application. If I like Steve, I hit approve, it just changes his status as ready to hire. If you have an applicant tracking system, as long as you have a way to change some status to say ready to hire, well, that's the big connectivity point that we need for Sage HRMS. Because now I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go back to self-service. Clint Eastwood is ready to hire somebody. He's going to log in. He's going to go over here to forms, manager file cabinet, initiate a new form. It's a new hire. It's a new hire form. And you can see it's totally blank, right? So if you don't have an applicant tracking system or applications on your website, if you want paper, you could go in here and fill in, who do we want to hire? Well, I want to hire, Michelle T-Bolt. Sorry if I butchered that last name, Michelle. And I would go ahead and type in all the information that I've got on you, and we'd be good to go. But since we are collecting applications electronically, well, if we connect the two, now we have a menu that shows everybody who's ready to hire. And if I pick one of these, like Joe Rotella, it's going to take everything it can off of that online application and populate the new hire form. And just so you see, there's no magic behind the scenes here. If I go look at my employee list and I scroll down to the R's, there's no Joe Rotella in here, right? So there's no smoke and mirrors. We don't have a Joe in the HR system at all. Let's see, if I want to fill this in, maybe I didn't collect marital status on the form, so I'm gonna, just pick marital status. I've got an address. The job, well, maybe he interviewed for something different, or once we talked to them, we said, we're not sure. Actually, you would be better in one of these jobs. I can override any of that. And let's do annual pay. Joe was a tough negotiator. He asked for 30, but we really want him, so we're going to bring him in at 30. It calculates the pay period salary, the unit pay. I'm going to go ahead and initiate. You guys know how it works. It's going to send email to John Wayne for him to approve it. Let's bypass all those approvals though. I'm going back to that administration website. I'm going to log in as the head of HR, Veronica Bell. There's 9 things routing, and sure enough, there's that new hire form. And so she can look at it, audit it, see if there's anything that she needs to change. Maybe something got screwed up when someone filled it out. All looks good to me. I think we're ready to hire this person. So I'm going to skip all the approvers like I did last time and say CEO said to rush this hire. All approved. I'm done. So now I've approved that form. Well, what happened? It moved from an active status to pending. You can think of pending as like the inbox for HR, where your paper forms go when everything's approved. Now I have it set up that any form that touches payroll requires a human to say, yep, I agree. But you can turn that off. You can turn it off for any form at all. So in other words, to hire Joe Rotella and get him in the system, HR can look at this form, view it, see exactly what's on the form, see that all the approvers were skipped, blah, blah, blah. When they're ready, they hit save. That's it. We just hired that employee. We're done. So if I go over to the HR system now, and I click on View or Edit Employees, and we scroll down to the R's, there's Joe Rotella. There's the address I filled in. There's the demographics I filled in. If we go over to Job and Pay, I can now look up and say, okay, what's the current pay? Should be 30K. Yep, there it is. And what's the job? Manufacturing. And who do they report to? Clint Eastwood. So I've hired this person, filed, in double quotes, a piece of paper, shows an approval process, show who reviewed it. Well, now we have to onboard this guy. So I'm going to go back to SelfService, and all we would have to do is tell Joe, hey, Joe, since we're hiring you, I know you don't start till the end of September even, but from home, visit this URL, answer a couple of security questions, and you'd make this a little harder than what I've got here. As soon as you do that, you can create your own login and your own password, and you will be in SelfService. Now, there's nothing in here, right? There's no time off, there's no pay history, because I don't even start till September. But I do have a menu item called Required Actions. This is my onboarding packet. So you can pick any number of forms, bundle them together, put them in a group, give the group a name, and tell Sage HRMS when do you want to assign somebody that group. So I have a group here that says it's onboarding, give it to them if their start date's within 30 days. I have another list of forms that's an annual to-do list, because every year on your service anniversary, I want you to re-sign the employee handbook, the confidentiality agreement, the safety agreement, the whole 9 yards. A lot of times we're used to old school, you sign the handbook when you start, you never sign it again unless it changes. But SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, Best practice now says you should have people re-sign these things every year. It really lowers the risk of a wrongful termination lawsuit. So I put together a bunch of forms here. And hey, if you're in multiple states, my onboarding list actually has the federal forms for every state. But not only did I say show the whole list when someone starts, then I said within the list, only show the state form for the state that matches where they live. So I don't need separate lists for every state. I've got one. This is just my best practice for forms. You could change it. I always tell folks, hey, send me your onboarding packet and I'll walk through it. We'll see, how well we can do it and if we have any suggestions. I like to start with a data confirmation form. So Joe can come in and say, yep, oh yeah, you got my name and address right. That's everything. Oh, you don't have my cell. Let me fix that. And oh, I didn't give you any emergency contacts. Well, my first emergency contact is going to be Vicki Parsons, and she's my friend, and she lives on Main Street in Columbus, and I know Vicki's home number, and I know her cell too, so I'm going to fix that. And then let's see, my second emergency contact is going to be Michael. And he's also my friend, and he lives on Summit Street in Daly City, California. And I know his cell. I don't know his other numbers, but I know his cell. So I'm not going to worry about my education or my previous employment. You'll see there's no routing here. We don't need a supervisor or anybody to approve any of this stuff, so I'm just going to initiate. So that's done. If I go to my required actions, I've got a green check mark there. Oh, I got to do my W-4. So just so you see, there's what the W-4 looks like. It's all blank. I'm going to go back up here and say, my marital status is single, and I want to withhold an additional $8.98. So I'm going to hit save and continue. And if we jump down to the form, you can see it's checked the right box, filled in. But not only does it right on the screen, of course, it's going to flow into HR, which is going to flow right into payroll. Your payroll person likes to know everything that's going on. No worries. Set up an alert. Let them know something's changed, right? I'm going to save and come back to this later. I want to go over this with my accountant because I never get the withholdings right. How about my confidentiality agreement? Yep, there's the whole agreement. I could read this whole thing. Yeah, it's all good. Oh, we have an electronic signature block. So you can put an electronic signature block on any form. To be a valid electronic signature in the US, we have to put our name exactly as HR knows it. And then I chose to put the last 4 digits of the SOCH. I display the SOCH on the form. You wouldn't do that in the real world. I just do that when I demo because I can't remember all these SOCHs. And then we have to show intent. We could check a box or pick from a drop-down. We had one client whose attorney liked the drop-down better because it's 2 clicks, 1, 2, instead of 1. You wouldn't put both, you'd just put 1. And then we're going to put today's date, and we read the attestation and click the button. So now we've done that. A handbook acknowledgement, too big to put a handbook on a form, so I'm just going to put a link out there, and I'll go ahead and fill in the date that I read it. And again, we're going to do our electronic signature block. So I got that done. And my attestation. Let's see what else we got out here. Form 8850, you could do your CC 305 if you're a federal contractor. You want to do direct deposit, no worries. I use an attachment here to let people attach a picture from their cell phone or a scan of a deposit slip or a voided check. And then there's a picture of the check, and we can split the deposit up as many line items as we want. I'm just going to save and get out of there. I won't do that for now. And we have a paperless I-9 too. So here's your I-9. We have a place for attachments. If somebody wants to take pictures or scans of the documents from lists A, B, or C, do that. Of course, you're going to want to see the originals on day 1 or within the first 3 days they come on board to meet requirements. Another great use for an alert. You hire someone, this I-9 is not done after a day, send them an email. If it's not done after 2 days, email them and their manager to say, hey, you have 24 hours. Hey, day 3, they don't have it, they come back, can't come back till they bring it in. Employee fills out their information. They have to say that what their work authorization is. If they're using alien authorized work permits, they can fill all that in. The employee stops at this section. If they use a translator, there's the translator section. Here's where the employer can go in and review and verify the docs. And then here's the actual I-9. And just as a little tip, you see how it's all blank, right? Let me go ahead and hit save and continue. And then I'm going to jump down to the form. Notice all these little NAs. You might want to check what you're doing by hand now, because if you leave any fields blank on an I-9, then you can be dinged during an audit. So the instructions, and they're buried deep in the instructions, says any field that's blank, you actually have to put N/A in capital letters. So I'm going to get out of here. We're not going to finish the whole thing, but there's our paperless I-9. Now, of course, I have a list, and I know what you expect of me. But what I think is really cool here is I can go over to the supervisor, Clint Eastwood, and when Clint logs in, if he goes over to the manager tab, he can see all the checklists, all the forms that HR has assigned to his people, and of course filter by an individual. So this way, when a manager is doing a one-on-one with somebody, they can be held accountable to help get these forms into HR. And of course, HR has the same exact kind of list. So if I get out of here and I log over here over to HR Actions Admin, we log in as the head of HR, we can go see what's going on. Oh, there's that handbook acknowledgement, there's the confidentiality agreement. And what happened though to that onboarding? Remember, I put in my emergency contacts. That's not showing up here. Well, that I had set up to just automatically update. So let's go check it out. I'm going to go find Joe Rotella. I might have actually been sitting on Joe, who knows. Let's go find Joe and go over here to his contacts. And there's Vicky, my friend, and there's Michael, my other friend. So that was totally paperless. HR didn't even get involved. It's all done. That online file cabinet, that's pretty cool. Right? We can go here and we could search for any form and say, hey, what actually do we have on record for this Rotella guy? So let me go find Rotella. And I'm going to look at all forms, even if they're not complete. And there we have 4 things already in his online file. Doing a transfer is just as easy, right? Let's log in as a different supervisor, John Wayne. I'm going to go over to forms and I want to transfer one of my folks. So I'm going to go over here to my employee section of forms and go to the manager file cabinet and pick one of my direct reports, Dan Rutherford. Pick one of my forms. How about a transfer? Let's fill it out fast. So Dan right now is in operations in San Francisco. He's in plant foreman. There's lots of jobs in manufacturing. But I need to move him over to QA, so I'm going to change departments. Now I only have a list of jobs in that department. I'm going to make him a QA inspector. And again, there's lots of scrolling because I've zoomed in so much. I'm going to change who he reports to. It's not me anymore, right? We're transferring him. Let's transfer him over to Sam. Hey, I got 3 people on this routing slip, but I put a rule in place that said any form that increases salary more than 10% needs extra executive sign-off. So let's try that. As part of this promotion, this transfer, let's give them a big raise, 15%. Let me hit save and continue. The form will update. Now look how many people have to approve. So we have strategic routing as well. Dan has 3 direct reports, Sally, Donna, and Paul. They all report to him. But when we move him, I don't want them to go with him. They need to stay in manufacturing. So I need to reassign them to Clint Eastwood. That's it. I'm good. Let's initiate. See how fast we do the transfer? I'm going to log off. We're going to go over here to admin. We're going to pretend everybody signed off on it because we don't want to go through 5 different signatures. There's my active action. Transfer for Dan. I'm going to approve it all. CEO said do it now. Hit approve. It'll be over here in pending just because I have all my salary forms go to pending. Hit save, boom, we're done. So if we go over here now to HRMS and I go find Dan and we go look at his job and pay, let's see where he's at. New salary, 51K. If we go look under his history, we'll see that he used to be a plant foreman and then he got promoted. And his new job now should be quality inspector, and he reports to Sam Wilson. And if we go ahead and look up any of those other folks like Sally, Paul, and Donna, remember them? If we go look at who they report to under current job organization, they have a new supervisor. So we hired somebody, onboarded them, transferred them. Of course, they would have done their open enrollment, or they could have gone to the third-party site and done their enrollment. Maybe we should look quick at a performance appraisal form and then see if anybody has any questions. I'm going to log back in. How about as John Wayne? Go down here to forms. And let's see, initiate a new form for myself, maybe. And I got a bunch of examples up there, but there is a performance appraisal form that I fill out for myself, and then my manager does an appraisal as well. So this is what a performance appraisal form looks like. You can have sections, that's this big black stripe, instructions in each section. You can have questions. Questions can have an employee comment box. Don't worry about the size, it grows as you type. Employee comment, manager comment, both or none. Employee rating, manager rating, both or none. Weights. So, you know, Dan feels pretty good about himself. He's going to just put, you know, I'm a rock star, or John, I should say. And I'm not going to fill in all the comments, but we'll go ahead and, John feels really good about himself. He's going to give the top score. He can set comments for next year, goals. I had a great year. And then send it to his supervisor, Grace. So, I missed some. So we have field checking. So I can't submit a form that doesn't have everything filled in. We're going to pretend I put in all my goals and rated my goals, that sort of thing. Send it to the supervisor. Yep, that took. If we log off, you can see what it's like here for Grace, the supervisor. So Grace is going to log in. She's going to go over to forms, look at forms that are ready for her to review. There's John's performance evaluation. He gave himself a 5. Grace could say, you know, I don't think so. So she can see his comments and his rating. Then she can do her own rating in here. She's going to give him a slightly lower score. And I won't submit it. We won't go back and forth. We can tie compensation fields onto this form as well if you want to do comp and performance together on the same form. So let's just save it. And if we go up top, Grace gave him a 4.29. John gave himself a 5. So there's an example of the performance appraisal process. Behind the scenes, when we transferred Dan, by the way, we automatically updated Active Directory. So if you email IT now to say someone's changed title, phone number, position, just so they can keep Active Directory up to date, you don't have to do that. If you're in an organization where you terminate someone and the only people who know are management and IT, because you have to tell IT, hey, shh, 4 o'clock today, we're firing Steph. So 4 o'clock, turn off Steph's email. You don't have to do that. HR can automatically update Active Directory. It won't delete their account, but it'll disable it. Now, of course, I can't go through all the little wheels we saw there on that Sage HRMS slide about all the functionality that's available, modular-based inside of HRMS. But remember, again, it is a modular system, so we have the ability to do applicant tracking, payroll, time and attendance, talent management, reporting, analytics, the whole shebang. But I hopefully gave you a good overview in about 50 minutes as to what was possible with Sage HRMS. Phew, I'm out of breath. So any questions out there? Everybody's quiet. I see some stuff came in the Q&A window, but overall seems pretty calm. I'm going to see if Kelly got any questions out there she wants to fire at me, and I can do my best to answer them.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Joe, for that excellent presentation. Really thorough, and I actually was able to keep up with it. So thank you.
Well, you're ahead of me because I'm out of breath on this end.
All right. Well, you're still on the hook. All right. So one of the first questions that we got was asking if Sage HRMS works with other payroll solutions.
So absolutely. You can see here that I have payroll. In this case, I've got payroll. I've got a Sage payroll. And so payroll here is embedded right into HRMS. And let me get out of here and we can go see what payroll looks like. So this is an example of Sage payroll, and it's got a nice little field here. Let's see, process payroll. And we have a little map that guides people through the process, right? Open payroll, import your time, calculate the payroll, manage your garnishments, do any of your matches, print your checks, create your EFT, and do your deductions. So if you're using a Sage payroll, we can typically plug it in right here. If you're not using Sage payroll, then no worries. You're still going to use all of the payroll fields that we have up here, like in job and pay. So let me go find an employee. You're still going to fill in like their payroll fields, their pay period, salary, the frequency, annual pay, any of that stuff. But then Sage can push all this to your other payroll provider. So you're going to track everything in HR. It's going to go over to payroll. Payroll is going to happen. And then if you have online pay stubs, we can bring those over and show them in employee self-service. But you're still going to drive payroll from here. You're going to make benefit selections, put it all in here. It's going to send it over to payroll. And pretty much any payroll system we can talk to.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. We got another question here asking about the deployment. Is it just on premise, or can it be in the cloud? Can it be hosted?
Cool, yeah, so good questions. Sage is licensed software. That means you own it, but that's different than where you install it. So you can install it on premise or in the cloud. The nice part about the cloud solution is that it's single tenant. That means you're the only person using it. So sometimes people hear SaaS, software as a service. That's typically, you don't own it. You just rent it every month. Usually it's per employee per month, and it's up in the cloud, but it's usually multiple people using that installation. That's like an apartment building. Lots of people using it. Lots of people live in that apartment building, but you can't go and say, hey, can you redecorate the whole lobby just for me, please? Because that would impact everybody in the building. The nice part about Sage in the cloud, because it's single tenant, you own it. It's your whole building. You're the only one in it. They can still customize it. They can still integrate it with lots of other stuff. And you'll see a savings long-term over software as a service. So it is licensed software, and you can choose to install it on-premise or in the cloud. But if you do it in the cloud, it's single tenant. You own it. We can still customize it. We can still integrate it with your ATS or your payroll or your learning management system. You name it, no worries.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we've just got a couple more. One is asking if HRMS has performance appraisal forms.
So you saw a sample performance appraisal form.
Yep.
I did it very fast at the end.
Yeah, I think it may have been missed.
You can create those performance appraisal forms. Again, no limit. You decide what questions are on it. You can do comment fields, rating boxes, put pay on it as well. There's a brand new product. Let me see if I can, I don't know if this is going to work, but there's a brand new product that's just launching, and it's called Maviva. And so Maviva is a brand new goal management system. And you can see here, I think I'm still sharing. So here, when you bring up a dashboard, I can see what my goals are. Become chair of a restaurant chain, increase revenue. If I click on a goal, I can see exactly what the goal is. These metrics, by the way, can come right out of your ERP or accounting system. So if you have a salesperson and you want to track their, sales goals, they don't have to type in what they've sold. It pulls it in. This is their target, 500K. This is where they're at. you can click this little wheel and it'll show you everything it's pulled in from your accounting system, right? So no worries there. And what's cool about this is when I meet with you as your manager, I can go in here into conversation, add comments like you're doing great, better this month than last month, and put include on review. All of these goals and the manager comments flow right into the performance appraisal form. So this is really a different way of thinking. Normally we think of performance appraisal as, the beginning of a period, set your goals, check in 6 months later, do the formal review 6 months after that. This is all about continuous improvement, setting goals, having weekly or whenever conversations about them, tie that into alerts. And you got really cool because now alerts can tell a manager, hello, you haven't had any comments on Mary Stewart in 2 weeks. Are you meeting with her? Do you care about her? So now we've got continuous performance management with goal setting flowing right into a routine performance appraisal form.
Got it.
And actually this Maviva works even without Sage HRMS. So if you want to start with just goal setting and performance appraisal in your current environment, that'll work and it'll connect to any of your ERP systems. No worries.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, Joe, I think that's about all the time that we have today. Folks, please know that if you have any additional questions, we are here to help. Myself and the team here at Braincell will be following up with all of you that attended the webinar to handle any of those questions. Make sure that you receive the recording and yeah, see if you want to take the next step, and we can even schedule a one-on-one demo with you if you prefer. So once again, I just want to thank you all, especially you, Joe, for your wonderful presentation. Very insightful, and like I said, I was able to keep up with it, so that's saying a lot. But everybody, please have a great rest of the day. Thank you all once again for joining us, and thank you, Joe, for showing us what Sage HRMS is all about.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.